Okay, welcome back to Nick Lenz's Comic Corner Classic Known Classics. This is episode number 1445 and Doubleshot number 1339. We have now reached the final two trades of Jeph Loeb's run for Hulk. Alright, first up it is Hulk Volume 5, Fall of the Hulks. Yeah, this actually was a mini crossover event that happened in 2010, of all things. By the way, the marketing image they have for this thing is a clear homage to Fall of the Mutants from the 80s, which I thought that was so cool. Now, in the case of this book right here, it doesn't contain the entire crossover per se. No, it just mostly contains just the issues of Hulk per se, and Fall of the Hulks Gamma. That's simply the gist of this one. Yeah, 3 issues in a one-shot. Story by Jeph Loeb, artwork by John Romita Jr. and Ed McGuinness. Now, the one-shot, which I think is the start of this book, that's actually featuring Red Hulk apparently killing General Ross. Yep, so they apparently kill off General Ross in here. Oh, and by the way, they actually have it where apparently they later reveal in a flashback later on in the follow-up story of World War Hulks, where apparently he wore this very attire to fight the Hulk, one-on-one. Yeah. So, he gets killed by Red Hulk, and then, of course, they have his funeral, which is then about a bunch of characters. By the way, they actually had very people do his eulogy. First, it was Doc Samson. Rick Jones got a chance to chip in, along with The Thing. Yes, The Thing. Heck, even Bruce Banner, Ross's own son-in-law, they also brought up Glenn Talbot. And then after the funeral, we see apparently Betty Ross, who is alive and well, and Glenn Talbot. Yeah, there's an explanation for this later, what the heck these two are. Well, one of them anyways. And then we lead into the Fall of the Hulk storyline, where we have the debut of this brand new group of villains, known as the Intelligia. Basically, the group itself is new per se, but who member of the group is quite interesting. It's simply put like all of Marvel's evil super geniuses in one group. Group comprised of the Wizard. Yes, the Wizard from the Fantastic Four. There's also the Leader, MODOK, Red Ghost, the Mad Thinker. Surprisingly, Doctor Doom is not part of this group, and Red Hulk was briefly part of this group, and then for some reason he's had a former alliance with Bruce Banner. Yeah, no explanation for that. So pretty much they're here to plan a downfall of the Intelligia, which their plan is to kidnap various good guy geniuses. First, they kidnap Reed Richards, of all people, and then they kidnap Doctor Doom. And apparently the next person they kidnap is the Black Panther. Though Red Hulk had to basically fight the X-Men in order to get to him. And then we lead into the events of World War Hulks. Yep. But yeah, that's literally what happens here. Just a lot of setup. Of course, we get guest appearances in here from the Avengers, the X-Men. Thor doesn't really play a role in here in these issues. And, of course, the Fantastic Four. Lots of basically just dealing with supposedly the end of the Hulks. But then, of course, by the way, I give this book a 10 out of 10. It's really good. And then we lead into World War Hulks, where everybody's a Hulk. Yes, that's what happens in this event. Like, everybody becomes a Hulk. Like, surprisingly, Spider-Man is not affected by the Hulk gamma radiation. Yeah, apparently various characters get affected by the gamma radiation. People like, and you'd probably be surprised by this, like, Deadpool becomes Hulkpool. Spider-Man gets affected by it, despite the fact he was already affected by radiation anyways. Now he's got more radiation in his body. There's even, like, the Thing becomes basically like what he would look back in the 80s. Yeah, everybody gets basically irradiated. Also, this event sees the return of the original Hulk, the Green Hulk. Yep, he's back. Though this happened in the pages of Incredible Hulk, mind you. Now, what big thing happens in these issues per se? Well, we finally unveil who the Red Hulk is. General Ross. Yep, waited 2 years for that. Also was mentioned in here, of course they revealed those pages of Incredible Hulk, that Red She-Hulk is Betty Ross. Oh boy. Now, General Ross, I do agree with the opinion. That makes total sense for him to become the Red Hulk. Betty Ross becoming the Red She-Hulk makes absolutely no sense. Also, if you're curious though who's responsible for turning General Ross into the Red Hulk, that was in fact the Leader who did that. Yep, the Leader. And speaking of the Leader, Red Hulk depowers him. Yep, he depowers him. And in the pages of Incredible Hulk, he depowers MODOK. Yes, he depowers MODOK of all people. By the way, the Leader remains depowered for about 2 years. He is restored to he's restored to basically being the Leader per se, though the Red Leader in the pages of Joel Scholl's run for Thunderbolts. That happened 2 years after this run wrapped up. And then of course we have the third round of Hulk versus Red Hulk happening in Washington DC. Also, it's revealed in here that the Glenn Talbot showed up for all Hulks was in fact a robot. He's still dead. He died back in issue 265. They mentioned in the last book that he died fighting the Hulk. Yeah, he was basically fighting him with a war wagon. Yeah, it's basically the special military device that they had back in the 80s. They did not mention that there for some reason. I would have thought, though, they would have mentioned exactly what issue he died in. I know what issue he died in because I've looked up online. And plus, I read the issue. 265, look it up, came out back in the 80s. Actually, it was more like this. It was like very early 80s. I think they hit 300 by the time the 80s happened. Yeah, I think so. So, yeah, and then Green Hulk basically has his third round with the Red Hulk, where he basically fights him first in the White House of all places. The Green Hulk basically decides to punch a hole in a wall, and then he fights him basically across DC into the Amber Lincoln Memorial, and then he defeats and all of a sudden, don't turn back into General Ross. Don't turn back to Ross, because I think he was going to kill him. And then he pretty much surrenders right there. And then he's transferred to the very base that Hulk was at the start of the run, where they're paid a visit by Steve Rogers. Yes, Steve Rogers, who at this point is Commander Steven Rogers. Yeah, that was thanks to Mr. Siege. And then, of course, issue 24 ends the same way we end issue 1. A Hulk in a cell. Yeah, but different, let's say, numbers. Patient 413 Red Hulk stand clear of glass. Yep, that's how this book ends. The same way the book begins, with a Hulk in a cell. This book is fantastic. Give this book roughly a 10 out of 10. I will eventually review the rest of these two storylines eventually. But now to get my final thoughts on Jeph Loeb's run for the Hulk. For Series Hulk. It lasted 24 issues. And here you go. The entire run. Volume 1. Volume 2. Volume 3. Volume 4. And now 5 and 6. By the way, John Reed Jr. does the opening. He does the one shot here, then Ed McGuinness does the rest of this one. This one is all Ed McGuinness who does the artwork. Yeah, it's interesting though. Ed McGuinness does a good chunk of the artwork for this whole run. I think the only issues he skips, like, they also have a lot of artists on issue 24, like a lot of artists for this final thing. Like, aside from Ed McGuinness, the other artists on issue 23 are, you have Herb Temple, Dave McCraig, Tim Sale, Dave Stewart, Dale Cohen, Sal Buscema, Brad Anderson, Ian Churchill, Edgar Delgado, Mike Deodato, Rain Burrito, Len Francis Yu, Gary Angstrom, I think it's pronounced the guy's last name, Maddie Garcia, John Mayer Jr., Claus Johnson, Emily Warren, Dean Wyckhorse, Emma Guinness, obviously, Mark Farmer, and Jason Keith. Wow, what a lot of artists for one freaking issue. Yes. I gotta say, this was fun to review. I love reviewing this. This was actually pretty good. I'm glad the fact I picked this up when I was at Comic-Con this past weekend. Like, I was shocked to see, like, in this box, all, like, these 6 trades contain the entirety of Jeph Loeb's run for the book. And here's something you might find interesting, though. Like, who takes over? Like I said, who takes over, like, as soon as basically that he leaves the book with basically this issue? I believe it was Jeph Parker, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. Yeah, I believe it's Jeph Parker takes over. Yeah, he takes over with the very next issue of the series. Yeah, so they have Jeph Parker pretty much take over the rest of this run. Yeah, for pretty much the remainder issues of this whole run. Yeah, for the remaining, like, 35 issues, it's all Jeph Parker. You might be thinking, that's interesting. Yeah, for pretty much the whole run. It becomes a very weirdish run, per se. But yeah, Jeph Parker is the writer for pretty much this whole run. His run finally ends in 2012 after only doing like 35 issues. Yes. Jeph Parker himself is a really good writer, per se. The only book that he has written I did not really like very much was his run for Justice League United. Mainly my problem with that book was it didn't feel like what Jeph Lemire was doing when he was writing the book. It felt as though this was a completely different book, and the fact they dropped characters for some reason. Jeph Parker is also known for basically doing some comedy in his books. I mean, we think of basically Jeph Parker, what do you usually think of? You think of, well, some people might think of Hulk, or his run for Thunderbolts, which actually lasted for a pretty good period of time. I think it was in that book about 3 or 4 years in that book. Like, of course, well, Justice League United. But yeah, he's basically working on a lot of, like, well, he worked on Amazing Fantasy Volume 2. He worked on Marvel Avengers, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, Avengers. He also is the creator of Ages of Atlas. Yep, he created these guys. He worked on X-Men First Class, the one that became ongoing. That was all him. Yeah, basically a lot of small-scale stuff, per se. He did work on also the Age of Sentry miniseries. Yep, he worked on that. He worked on the second volume for Ages of Atlas. Dark Reign the Hood. I have previously reviewed this one. He did Spider-Man 1602, which was really good. Yeah, a lot of really sporadic books, per se. Well, technically, if you look at, well, what was, you probably ask, okay, what was the last official book he ever did for Marvel? His last book he did was Agents of Atlas, Volume 3, Number 1. That was the last official book he ever did for Marvel. Yeah, because, well, Greg Pak, he did a backup story called Behind the Veil. That was his last official comic he worked on at Marvel. And you're probably thinking, really? So, the first issue of the recent Age of Atlas series he worked on? Yes. Though previously he worked in the final issue of Fantastic Four. Yeah, though at the time anyways, Fantastic Four by James Robinson. He also worked on the Indestructible Hulk Annual. Yep, he was a writer of that. And, well, pretty much after, he, of course, wrapped up his... Yeah, pretty much after Red Hulk ended, he mostly was writing, during the period of time he was writing this. He also wrote Thunderbolts. He wrote that for a good period of time. He wrote Dark Avengers, Red She-Hulk. Yes, he was the writer of Red She-Hulk. So, it seems like once they took over this book, he just stuck with this book. Yeah, once they took over issue 25, he stuck with this book for pretty much, a lot of the period of time. He pretty much was also working on Thunderbolts the same period of time he was working on this book. Yep. So, he had 2 ongoing series at the same time working on. For Thunderbolts, he came out with issue 148 and left when it became right for the final issue of Dark Avengers. Yep. And he also worked on Fears of the Worthy. He worked on 2 issues of Venom. Yeah, mostly pretty stuck for 1 or 2 series. But if you think about his last regular comic he did, aside from a few one-off issues, was back in 2013. When he worked on the Red She-Hulk book. Which that was 8 years ago. So basically, he hasn't done all that much for Marvel over the year, with the exception of a few one-off issues here and there. I mean, yeah, that's pretty much all the guy did. But I will eventually get a chance to review Jeph Parker's in the future, just not right now, of course. Okay, so, yeah. Jeph Loeb's run for this book, fantastic. If you think about it, per se, it's one of the more longer runs he's worked on, because a lot of the time his runs are not very long. Not really, no. Yeah, with the exception of this book, can you think of any book he worked on that he worked on for a long period of time aside from this book? Not really, no. I mean, is there any book, either as long or longer than this? Well, you could say his Superman run. He came on with issue number... Let's see, it was 151. And he finally laid the book into 183. That's roughly about 33 issues. I would say that's only one book at DC. At Marvel, aside from this book, there was no other book he worked on for a long period of time. You could say X-Force, per se. X-Force, that was 19 issues. But a lot of the books he worked on basically were not long running. Yeah, not exactly very long runs. But yeah, Hulk is pretty much the longest book he worked on. Worked on this book for 24 issues. Yep. But not much else to say about it. It's good. And I can't wait to review more Jeph Loeb stuff. I do know that it's on my list to review for reviewing. I had to review Ultimates 3 for him, and that's, writing-wise, not very good. And Ultimatum. Ultimatum, I will eventually review that in the future when I get my hands on it. But as for a lot of the other stuff, they'll come eventually. Yep. So yeah, that's a particular review. And that's going to be pretty much a video today, because I don't have any more time to do more videos today. So tomorrow, I expect to see definitely one video coming tomorrow, and that's viewing the Pentland episode of the 7 Deadly Sins. Okay? Next video. Bye.